All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Board of County Commissioners in Lee County, Florida. Today is September 15th. This morning we'll begin with the invocation. Please rise, and I'd like to call forward Pastor Ryan Deaton from Life Church. Good morning, Ryan. How you doing?
Let's pray. God, we thank you, first of all, for the incredible privilege that we have to live in beautiful Lee County. Lord, we thank you that we continue to see the number of COVID cases decrease. And we ask today that you would give wisdom to scientists and doctors, those that are seeking a remedy. We ask that you would just release healing across our land to bring a speedy end to this pandemic. Lord, we pray for our county commissioners today. We pray that you bless them and their households, and that today you grant them wisdom from heaven as they make decisions that impact all of us. For that, we give you thanks and we give you praise. In the name of your Son, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. All right. This morning we do have a couple of celebration ceremonial items on our agenda, and I'd like to recognize Commissioner Sandelli for the first item. Commissioner?
Good morning. This first resolution from the Board of County Commissioners, whereas Florida has the highest...
Real quick, Commissioner, before you start reading,
Yes.
Let's call up the folks who are here for that presentation.
Yes.
The falls prevention one?
That's correct.
Why don't the folks who are here for the falls prevention resolution come stand at the podium while the Commissioner reads this proclamation to you? Did they make it today? Great.
You're just a little shy.
A couple of health here.
All right, just stand right by the podium there.
No, behind the podium, because you may get a chance to get your picture took and say some words.
Perfect. There you go.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner.
Good, my pleasure. Whereas Florida has the highest percent of citizens aged 65 and older in the United States, and whereas 1/4 of the people 65 and older will fall each year, whereas 1 out of 5 falls causes a serious injury such as broken bones or a head injury. Falls are a leading cause of both fatal and non-fatal injuries among people 65 and older. And whereas falls are the most common cause of traumatic brain injuries among Florida's older population, accounting for 58% of the fatal traumatic brain injuries among older adults. And whereas falls can lead to depression, loss of mobility, and loss of functional independence, and whereas in 2019 the average hospitalization charge for an unintentional fall among the Florida residents aged 65 and older was $42,852. Whereas the financial toll for older adults falls is expected to increase as the population ages, it is estimated that to reach $101 billion nationally by 2030. Whereas injuries from falls are preventable community health problems, whereas evidence-based programs reduce falls by utilizing strategies such as exercise programs, balance screenings, medication management, vision improvement, reduction of home hazards, and fall prevention education. And whereas Lee County Trauma Services District and the nonprofit organization StepSmart are partnering to provide awareness, education, and a multidisciplinary approach to preventing falls throughout Southwest Florida. And now, therefore, it is resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida, does hereby proclaim September 22nd, 2020 as Fall Prevention Awareness Day in Lee County and urge our citizens to commit its observance. Duly executed, Board of County Commissioners, Brian Ham, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. If you all will come forward, congratulations. He's going to hand the proclamation off to you, and we'll take a socially distanced picture.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for the work that you do, too, and the camera's right behind you. Come on.
Elbow to elbow.
Great. And does somebody want to say a few words for us? Good deal. If you'll go to the podium and just say it right there by the microphone. You don't have to touch everything. It's all set.
We appreciate the awareness for falls. It's one of our leading causes. I'm Dr. Kasevich. I'm the trauma medical director at Lee Memorial Hospital, and especially when we've been seeing a lot of falls lately, especially when people were indoors during the lockdown and during the COVID. So it's really important that people are aware and take the steps to try to prevent these, given our a high population of elderly folks. We have, I think the median age is 48 years old in Lee County. We see people not only from Lee County, but we see from Collier County, which is even an older population. So it's really important that people are aware, and there are steps to prevent it. And when you're elderly, you don't have to fall. And so it's one of those things that causes lots of problems, a lot of money for the healthcare system. So we're very excited that we're bringing awareness to this. So thank you.
Doctor, thank you very much for raising awareness. Appreciate all the effort.
I have to say, I've been serving on the trauma committee for many years at Lee Health, and they're correct. I think 64% last year of the traumas in Lee County were from people falling less than 4 feet. So when your spouse wants you to hang that special light 20 feet up, stay off the ladder. It's not worth it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner
And
Sandelli.
my wife wanted me to read it twice because I'm in that group. So.
Stay off the ladder. You're good to go.
Good deal. And thank you, doctors, too, for all the hard work you all are doing. All right. Our next ceremonial presentation is for Hispanic Heritage Month. I'd like to call forward to the podium Carmen Salome. And Carmen, I'm going to ask you to introduce the rest of your crew that came with you this morning.
Thank you, Commissioners. I have just a few of my friends with me. If I can have Mr. Rafael Lopez from Hispanic Vote, Mike Gonzalez, Sylvia Hasek. Come on up, my friends. Marilyn
Right behind her
Santiago.
at the podium there. It'd be great.
Marilyn Santiago, Claribel Bocanegra, Jose Valentin, Juan Gonzalez, Milka Pratt, Ruth Sid Simon, Katia Lanzalone, Sandra Aguilar with the Hispanic Chamber, Diana Giraldo. There are a few of the agents from Premier Lifestyle Group, Yanalisa Miranda. We are here this morning. Thank you very much, Commissioners, for this opportunity.
Well, I'm really proud that you all asked me to read this resolution this morning, and it's a privilege to be able to do this on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners. So I'll get right to it. The resolution celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month reads as follows. Whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month celebrates the Hispanic community and the recognition began in 1968 as Hispanics Heritage Week under President Lyndon B. Johnson and was enacted into federal law on August 17, 1988, calling upon the United States to observe this time with ceremonies, activities, and programs. Whereas Hispanics represent 21 countries, diverse in history and culture, who come seeking freedom and opportunity and make incredible contributions in the public and private sectors. Whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month is a time to honor the invaluable ways Hispanics contribute to our common goals. This year's theme, A History Serving Our Nation, reminds us that over 1.5 million Hispanic American men and women have served our great country in the armed forces with bravery, honor, and courage. Whereas Hispanics have enhanced and shaped our national character with traditions that reflect their communities, along with a deep sense of faith, family, and community. And whereas Lee County residents celebrate this rich and diverse culture and recognize the important role of Hispanics in creating and building our future. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida, proclaims September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month in Lee County, and we urge all citizens to enjoy the local programs and activities being offered throughout the county. This is duly executed the 15th day of September 2020 and signed by me, the chairman. Congratulations, y'all. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. And I think if we're quick, we could probably take one picture real quick. If everybody will just squeeze in, and we'll do our best. And hold your breath or something. Here you go, Carmen.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, guys. Hey, Marilyn. How you doing? Very good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Hey, how you doing, Rob? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, and Carmen, if you would like to say a few words.
Thank you. Just a few words, Commissioners. We want to thank you very much for recognizing the Hispanic Heritage Month of 2020. I'm here with just a few of my friends, and we represent nearly 30% of this vibrant Lee County community. We are doctors, attorneys, architects, realtors, business owners, pastors, law enforcement, and first responders. We represent a growing portion of the economic engine of Lee County. Hispanics have made contributions in business, industry, government, education, media, history, and the field of science. We have served this country in the military with bravery, honor, and courage. I want to thank you so much for recognizing the achievements and the contributions Hispanics have made to shape the fabric of this community and of our great country. Thank you.
Welcome home.
Well, congratulations, and thanks again, everybody, for coming down to help us celebrate today. Very good. All right, we'll move on to what's called the recap. This is the time where we talk about any additions, deletions, or corrections to our agenda for today. And, yep, you're welcome to take off if you'd like. On the recap, we have two items that county administration has requested be deferred, items C16 and item C20. Item C16 is the item where we'll approve the purchase of Hammond Stadium replacement seating. We'll move that to a future agenda for further review. And C20 is directing to public hearing the Sanibel Fire Rescue District's COPCN application. Do I have a motion to defer those items? Motion from Commissioner Manning. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any discussion on that? No?
If I could, Chairman, on number 16, thank you for staff for pulling this. I know we talked about it yesterday a little bit quickly in a briefing. Again, this comes back on the questions I had concerning was, one, will the seats be needed? And we don't know what the spring training is going to look like next year. Will they be needed then? And also warranty for the seats, too, if those seats will be warranted compared from the last purchase. If you just check that out before it comes back to us.
Good items, Commissioner Pendergrass. Very good. All right, so on specifically the deferral of these two items, does anybody wish to speak in public comment on that motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Any further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries. So those two items have been deferred from today's agenda. Under revisions and corrections, the county administration has asked that on item A2, the administrative agenda item number 2, we approve, it's called approving agreement transferring ownership of City of Palms Park to City of Fort Myers. It says it should be under county administration and not court administration. Sounds like it was just a Scrivener's error. Does somebody wish to make that motion for the correction? Motion from Commissioner Manning, and the second is from Commissioner Mann. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on just that Scrivener's error? Seeing none, we'll close that. Any discussion, commissioners? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. And that takes care of everything on the recap that we need to move. I'll move to the consent agenda now. This is items 1 through 34 on the agenda. And Commissioner Mann, you have items you'd like to pull?
Yes. I sent a late notice on these, but this won't take long. 32, 33, and 34, they're all TDC items, and I think Ms. Feigl will be able to address those.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll pull those items and we'll discuss those after the consent agenda. Commissioner Manning, anything to pull?
None.
I have nothing to pull. Commissioner Pendergrass?
No items.
No. Commissioner, okay, so very good. Does somebody wish to make a motion on the balance of the consent agenda? So Commissioner Manning moves approval of the balance of the consent agenda. Second is from Commissioner Pendergrass. All right. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment? So there's going to be multiple times for public comment today. This is the first time where we'll talk about the consent agenda. This is items 1 through 34 on the agenda. I'll go ahead and take public comment for those items now. Yep, would you like to come forward? Very good. Now, if you're going to talk about something that's not on the agenda, that's later in the meeting. It's called public presentation of matters by citizens, and I'll be calling for that later. Morning.
Hello, Sean Hartman. Good to see you guys again. I haven't been here in a while. Just two things. On consent item number 4, the direct amendments to Ordinance 1812. On that one, I'm concerned about you guys are essentially giving this regulatory authority to a single bureaucratic official, the Director of Parks and Recreation. I understand the need for this type of regulation. Certain big dogs could possibly create harm. At the same time, I'm also slightly concerned that this may be unnecessarily discriminatory to pit bulls, which does unfortunately happen from time to time. I would much rather see, if this is a necessary thing, you meeting with the Parks and Recreation Department and trying to come up with this and codify it as an actual ordinance in terms of that sort of regulation, if it is necessary, as opposed to just removing your authority as the county commissioners. We elect you to form these regulations, and it just seems like you're just sort of stepping back and kicking it to someone else. I would also like, if possible, on item number 17, I just want to get some information, if you can have someone get to me about the fungicides, herbicides, pesticides that you guys are purchasing, if possible, where that's going to be used. Me and my family are slightly concerned about those type of chemicals, so we just want to know what's in them and where they will be used, so if someone could get back to me on that. And then I will speak to you later on public comment.
Very good. Thanks, Mr. Hartman. All right. Anybody else wish to speak in public comment on the consent agenda items today? Okay, we'll close public comment on those items. Before we take up the motion, Mr. DeGillet, would somebody on staff go over item C4, kind of the thought behind why we're making the change?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Jesse, would you please come to the podium?
Good morning, Commissioners. Item C4 is a change to the current Parks and Recreation ordinance. It's 18-12. The reason we are doing this now is because our dog parks, many of them are over 10 years old, and they're still bound to the rules from back then. We've had numerous issues over the years concerning larger dogs being in the small dog side, and we are bringing this before you today so that we can potentially in the future have a height limit of the dogs going into the small dog off-leash areas.
Very good. Does, Mr. Lavender, one of the things I talked about in my briefing on this, which made me want to go ahead and send it to the public hearing so we can take comment. That's all we're doing today is sending it to a public hearing. So this will provide the opportunity for not only code enforcement or animal control, rather, to enforce this, but also gives the opportunity for park rangers to also enforce this regulation?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Okay, very good.
We currently do not have a means of enforcing larger dogs in the small dog areas.
And what happens sometimes, I guess, is we'll get bigger dogs in the small dog areas and can't get animal control there, but a park ranger might be nearby who could help out, and now this would empower them?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mr. Lavender. Appreciate that. All right. And then real quickly, Mr. DeGillet, can you talk about on item C17, maybe somebody from Natural Resources would be able to talk about the fungicides?
Yes, sir. Mr. Adelini?
There's Roland. Yeah.
Roland's over here.
Where'd he go?
17, the herbicides.
We have, I guess, Roland, if you could address the safeguards that we have in place on these.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. It'd be Mr. Searchy.
Mr. Searchy, okay.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
We purchased many different types of pesticides at DOT alone, and other county departments purchase different ones as well. It's for all the departments, not just us. For us, all our folks are trained. We go through classes to learn how to use these individual pesticides. Some are for roadside weeds, some are for floating hydrilla in the big canal. So there's just a plethora of different uses and training for them. But all our folks are trained, and they're all acceptable pesticides that we use.
So I imagine the goal is to use the least amount possible in the appropriate situations where it's called for?
Always, yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks. Any further questions, Commissioner Pendergrass?
So I know for the roadside cleanups and stuff in the areas where we have to keep flowways going, and also for water management reasons, are we using Roundup in any of those areas? The the newer mixture of Roundup for that?
Yeah, Roundup has different names, come by different trade names type thing, but we have and do use Roundup for them.
Okay, and those areas like the flowways off the roadways, those areas are managed by water management, and those already certain approved chemicals are used in those areas currently for the foliage there, correct?
Right. We abide by all the pesticide rules. Certain times of year, certain months you can't use certain types.
One more question, kind of leading off that. I know we could do a lot of private subcontracting for mowing, for example, of medians and beautification throughout the county. We provide substances for them to use, or they provide that part of their contract?
They provide that as part of their contract.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks. Any further questions, commissioners?
I just had one comment on the previous one on number 4. After a recent incident, Jesse and I spoke. I did go out to one of the parks to see it physically, to understand it a little bit better, and we had a follow-on discussion. So we're trying to be as involved as we can in these decisions.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? All right. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call the question. Any objection to the motion? Seeing no objections, that motion carries unanimously. So we've passed the consent agenda. Let's take up item 32, 33, and 34. Commissioner Mann, were you thinking we could move them all together?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Mr. DeGillet, if you'll introduce it quickly, and then Commissioner Mann, I'll give it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 32, 33, and 34 are all relative to tourism marketing in foreign countries.
Very good.
Exactly.
Commissioner Mann, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Pygott, if you would come forward while you're approaching us. It's twice been my honor to serve as chairman of the TDC in previous years. And during one of those periods, I had conversations with the whole TDC and Ms. Pygott, who's been, it's been our good fortune to have her run that operation for a long time now. We spoke. I had heard about so many of our Canadian friends coming to the north part of Florida along Bay County and from Pensacola across, and I was wondering why they're not coming further south and spending their hard-earned money here in Lee County. And as we chatted, we actually got into an expanded advertising promo, trying to attract those folks to get them to come see the really great parts of Florida. And now I think I read recently, because of the pandemic, that there's difficulty in even leaving Canada or going to Canada right now. And I'm wondering about the expenditures and how that relates. Or are we holding back? But we've also got questions about advertising, which we do at a high level. I mean, millions of dollars annually. And we get hundreds of thousands of tourists here from out of the state, and that's good. But because of the pandemic, that's my question. You're asking us to continue programs that might have been impacted by the pandemic, and you just comment on that.
Yes, sir. Obviously, the pandemic has had a significant impact on tourism and our local economy. However, this too shall end. And of course, we want to continue our efforts to bring visitors to our community and drive our local economy. During the pandemic, we have significantly scaled back our efforts. Internationally, you mentioned Canada specifically, with the inability to travel from Canada to the U.S. We've scaled back those contracts, and right now we're looking at them on a quarterly basis. This is an annual contract renewal in this case, but we have truly allocated our expenditures based on activity that we have been able to conduct in those communities. Don't want to completely stop. We want to stay top of mind, of course, for when the time is right. People do want to come back, as you can guess. It's already starting to get cold in Canada. I think they've already had some flurries in some spots, so we want to definitely make sure that they know about this warm weather destination. But we have been scaling our expenditures not only in the international markets, but also in the domestic market. You may remember back in May, First effort, advertising effort, was please stay home. And since that time, we've just done things that keep this destination, our community, top of mind, inspirational to them, but realizing that most people aren't traveling right now. People are beginning to plan trips, and we're speaking to people who are actively seeking travel. And just as a bit of an update, initial impact, March, April, May, significant decrease in visitation and bed tax revenue, but we are seeing things begin to come back a bit. numbers are significantly improved in the summer months. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, it's a bit of a roller coaster with the pandemic, and we all know that. But I can assure you, the department is being very responsible with the dollars and allocating them in a way that matches that revenue and makes sense in the pandemic.
Yeah, that was a great answer, and probably a little even more than I needed, but I think you've clarified what gives me comfort, that there is flexibility in our contracts with these advertising people that lets us cut back and adjust because of the circumstances.
Yes, sir.
That's what I needed to hear. Thank you. I'll move all three items.
Second. Thanks, Commissioner Mann. So we have a motion for approval of 32, 33, and 34 from Commissioner Mann, and the second is from Commissioner Manning. Do we have any further questions, Commissioners, on those items? Commissioner Sandelli?
I think as Commissioner Mann put together, they're all related to a representation, and that's invaluable to have people, in that side. I think the flexibility comes in the marketing piece as they adjust accordingly, and they've done a great job with that.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. Before we take the vote, I want to call, does anybody wish to speak in public comment on just items 32, 33, and 34 on the consent agenda? Okay. Mr. Hartman?
Hello again. I actually do kind of agree with your concerns, Commissioner Mann. At this time, because of the pandemic, I don't think it's wise to allot any of our tax dollars right now. I do know these are tourist tax dollars, but I think it would be better to save them a little bit for when people can actually finally start coming back and do a massive marketing campaign about how safe it is in Lee County. Obviously, our numbers are going down, so I don't think it's going to be too much longer now. But I wouldn't necessarily rush for this type of situation. So I absolutely agree with you, Commissioner Mann, and thank you for paying attention and making sure that our money is being spent accordingly.
Good deal. And for the minutes, that's Sean Hartman, S-E-A-N. Perfect. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Any further comments on that?
Mr. Chairman, just one last thought here. The items before us authorize the TDC for these expenditures. It doesn't mandate, so they still have that flexibility.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. Very good. Any further comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, folks. All right, we're now through the consent agenda. Let's move to the administrative agenda. We'll take these items one by one, and we take public comment on each item before we vote on it. Mr. DeGillet, will you introduce item one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll defer to the county attorney.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item one is a request from my office for the board to schedule an attorney-client session pursuant to Section 286.011, Paren 8, Florida statutes. This request is made pursuant to litigation involving FFD Land Company Incorporated versus Lee County. The request is that you set an attorney-client session for October 6, 2020, 8:30 a.m. Those persons in attendance will be Commissioner Manning, Commissioner Pendergrass, Commissioner Sandelli, Commissioner Hammond, Commissioner Mann, myself, Richard Wesch, Michael Jacob, outside counsel Jay Bartlett, Jeff Hines, and County Manager Roger DeGillet. By this request, I am seeking your input regarding settlement negotiations and/or strategy sessions related to the litigation.
Move the item, Mr. Chairman.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Manning. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Mann. Do we have any discussion on that or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for public comment. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on that item? I'll close public comment. Any further discussion? All right, are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries.
Thank you, sir.
Unanimously. Very good. Item number 2, Mr. DeGillet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 2, we're asking for approval to transfer ownership of City of Palms Park to the City of Fort Myers. Would like Mr. Harner to present the item, please.
Thank you, Roger. Good morning, Commissioners. In August of 2019, the city sent notice to the county per a reversion clause in the 2003 agreement between the city and county, requesting that we return the facility back to them. Since then, we've been working on an agreement. Today is the terms. We're bringing that agreement forward. The terms of those of that agreement is specific that if for any reason the city leases or rents and generates revenue from this, they would have to pay the county back for the $1 million that it costs to demo the building. The county agrees in this agreement to demolish the building. This agreement does not affect the fiveplex or the player complex that we also manage as well.
Very good. Any questions for our staff?
Move the item.
Okay, we have a motion for approval from Commissioner Manning. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Yeah, question. You're recognized, Commissioner Mann.
Could you just comment on our partnership with Florida Southwest College and their upcoming season? Is this affected in any way?
No, the agreement has a clause in it that it will take a year from the agreement to be approved. So they have 1 year to look for a new place. Their upcoming season will take place. And I also forgot to mention that the recovery time for investment is 2 years.
Okay, thank you. So they're good to go and not affected in any way.
Correct. We had conversation with them. They're very aware of this, yes.
What further questions do we have on this? All right. At this time, I'll call for public comment on the administrative agenda item number 2. Anybody wish to speak in public comment on that? Okay, we'll close public comment. Any further discussion, commissioners, on this item? Okay, seeing none, are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right. Item number 3, a Conservation 2020 purchase. Mr. DeGillet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would like Mr. Lavender to come to the podium and present to you a 2020 purchase opportunity.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Item 3 on the environmental item agenda is to approve acquisition or approve the purchase of 14 acres of riverfront land contiguous to the Olga Shores Preserve. We've got some drone footage that staff took recently of this site. It is one of the last remaining undeveloped Caloosahatchee riverfront parcels that has very dense oak hammocks and pristine vegetation. So this is a very exciting parcel for us. As you can see on the drone footage, there's potential for trails, there's potential for kayak landing opportunities, as well as boat. People are doing this now, pulling their boats up here. This parcel is contiguous to the Olga Shores Preserve, which, if you remember, Natural Resources in the future is going to come and do a water quality project on that western half of the parcel there. But this is just a really tremendous opportunity for the county.
Yes, it is.
Yep, very good. Any questions for our staff, commissioners? Commissioner Mann?
I'm thrilled to move this item.
Congratulations, Commissioner.
Right. Motion for approval from Commissioner Mann, second from Commissioner Manning. Do we have any further questions before I take public comment?
No, just I'm always looking for those keywords, contiguous to an existing piece, and accessibility at some point in time. So, well done.
Very good. Anybody here to speak in public comment on this item today? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. That's I'll tell you what, this is a jewel right on the riverfront here and a way to expand an already existing 91-acre preserve. And just
you can take that for sale sign off now. There's a for sale sign on the riverside.
Yeah, take that for sale sign
first thing
down and let's get it in the hands of the public. That's right. Well, very good. I'll go ahead and call the question. Any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. And congratulations, Mr. Lavender. You got something new to work on in parks over there, too. All right, let's take up item number 4, Mr. DeGillet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would like Robert Clemens to come to the podium and talk with you about consideration for acquisition and rejection of some of the 2020 conservation land opportunities.
Very good. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Robert Clemens, County Lands. The first part of the motion is we're requesting approval to forward 5 parcels for acquisition consideration. All 5 of these parcels were voted to forward unanimously by Class Act. The first parcel is nomination number 273-2. That's about a 20-acre tract of land. It's adjacent to the Alva Scrub Preserve. The next parcel is 462-2. It's about 144 acres adjacent to Big Hickory Preserve. Parcel number 600, it's about a 20-acre tract north of Caloosahatchee Creek's Preserve. This would be a water quality project. It's on the north side of Bayshore, but would work for some water quality for Palm Creek. Next is nomination 606. It's a 10-acre tract that's an infill for the Wild Turkey Preserve. And nomination 607 is about a 10-acre tract adjacent to the Pine Island Flatwoods Preserve.
Move the item, Mr. Chairman.
So motion for approval from Commissioner Manning. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Any questions for our staff on this? Just real quickly, the Conservation Lands Acquisition Stewardship Committee, the citizens panel, how did they vote on these?
Unanimously across the board. The other part of the motion is not to forward nomination 604. It's an isolated tract north of 80 behind the Winn-Dixie and the Olga area, and that was a unanimous vote not to forward that one as well.
Okay.
And then we have, just for acknowledgement purposes, nominations 584, 587, 597, and 599, all of which we are at impasse in negotiations with. All of those we were not able to come to terms as to price.
Excellent. So the motion is, Commissioner Manning, inclusive of the staff recommendation.
Correct.
And all of those. Okay, very good. And then the second as well, Commissioner Sandelli. Very good. All right, do we have anybody who's here to speak in public comment on these Conservation 2020 items today? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Any further discussion on this, Commissioners? All right, any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. And item number 5 on the administrative agenda, Mr. DeGillet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'd like Mr. Adelini to come to the podium and present his award of contract for Estero Barriers Regional Inlet Management Study. Roland?
Good morning, Commissioners. Roland Adelini, Natural Resources. This item is to approve a contract to Moffitt and Nichols to conduct a inlet management study for the area of Estero Barrier Islands. Addresses the movement of sand along south end of Estero, along Lover's Key, Big Hickory Island, and towards Bonita Beach. And this is important because eventually they'll generate an inlet management plan for this region. Helps us get permits for future renourishment projects as well as permits for any necessary dredging in those channels. So this provides that information that we'll need.
Move item number 5, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Motion for approval from Commissioner Manning. Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Very good. Any other questions or discussions for our staff here? Thank you, Mr. Adelini. Good introduction. Anybody here to speak in public comment on this item today, the sand study? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Any further discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. And the final item on our administrative agenda is number 6, Mr. DeGillet. Actually, I guess, well, this is our chief hearing examiner's annual merit increase and contract amendment. Is there somebody who could at least, maybe Mr. Wesch, just outline what we're being asked to look at with the contract amendment here today?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Board members, it's my understanding that the hearing officer has put forth a proposed amendment to her agreement whereby the term would be extended to coincide with her termination from the DROP program in the year 2024. By virtue of that extension, she is also seeking a pro rata distribution of vacation and sick leave and a restoration of approximately 67 hours of vacation leave that was swept from her account last December pursuant to county policy. And I believe I've covered those matters.
Excellent.
I believe the hearing officer was here,
And is Donna Marie here?
Yes, she's here.
Okay, very good. Would you like to say anything? Any comments? Introduction?
Move the item, Mr. Chairman.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Manning.
So the motion, I'll second that. The motion includes all the amendments included with the restoring the 67 hours that was swept last year. And also, do we also do the percentage increase of the same motion, or is that separate?
You could do it all in one motion if that's acceptable to your colleagues. Yeah.
So that's a good question. Commissioner Manning, what would you like in your motion as the percent increase for the merit?
6.
6? Okay, so the motion is for 6% merit increase and approval of the contract amendments that have been proposed. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have any further questions or discussion before I take public comment? Commissioner Sandelli?
My only concern reading this is my first time through this, and first of all, my congratulations to the group. They do a great job in preparing us, so on and so forth. I was trying to understand the difference between a proposed amendments to an existing contract versus a new contract. But if, again, it's the first time through this type of approach, if you're okay with it, then that's fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Commissioner Sandali, I think this contract is existing. I was chairman at that time and negotiated with the current HECS at that time. At the time when the contract was put together, we weren't taking into consideration the county's policy for employees. If you don't use vacation time by a certain date, you get swept. Basically, you lose it. At the time, her contract did not recognize that, where the contracts after her contract with the county manager and county attorneys did recognize that, and the time was accrued at a different rate. Because of that, but this still does not have a provision there for like a severance package, though. So this is basically clarifying that policy where last year she lost 67 hours because she was not able to use it because during that time it was busy. She had staffing issues. Personnel was out on maternity leave, so she was not able to use it, so she lost the time. This amendment will reconcile that and also would be able to give the employee their time back. And then all 3 employees that's under contract are all treated equally as far as what
That's great.
time and using it.
Again, I congratulate HECS Examiner for the great work that they do. This was a little bit new to me. We can't obviously talk in advance, so I just wanted to bring that up. But thank you for the
So it was
clarification.
oversight 3 years ago that the county policy, if an employee doesn't use their vacation time at a certain date, they lose it. So this, in her position, she was not able to take time off because of personnel being absent. So she did not get a chance to do
our sunshine laws sometimes keep me in the dark, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, that's why we're here talking about it publicly, and everybody knows what we're doing, and it's very transparent. But yes, her office does a great job there.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Excellent. Commissioner Mann, you had
The salary adjustment is for this year, or is that every year from now on?
I believe it's only for this year. We do it year by year.
That's what I would assume. And I'm looking for Ms. Collins to say yes, it's
The motion maker agrees that that salary adjustment is for this
for
year.
this year. Okay.
Correct. Okay. Very good. All right. So then we have a motion from Commissioner Manning, seconds from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have anybody who's here to speak in public comment today on the hearing examiner item? Okay, we'll close that. Any further discussion, commissioners? Good. Just want to say, congratulations to Donna Marie. Thanks for the good work. You've gotten tremendous evaluations from all the commissioners, and you do a great job for us. And so, happy to continue working with you. And sad to see that it looks like there's an end date, a drop end date here in 2024. But we know you'll have somebody great trained up to come behind you. All right, very good. I'll call the question. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right. Now let's move on to our 9:30 a.m. public hearings, and I'll ask the County Attorney's Office to introduce that item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I have provided your clerk with proof of publications for public hearings number 1, 2, and 3. All are sufficient for you to proceed. Item number 1 is a request from the Housing Finance Authority of Lee County for authorization to incur an amount of not to exceed $50 million in new borrowing to provide for affordable housing in Lee, Sarasota, Charlotte, Collier, DeSoto, Glades, Henry, Broward, Palm Beach, and Monroe counties. Commissioners, this hearing is required under Florida law. However, by virtue of the board moving forward, you incur no liability as to principal or interest on the bonds. They are strictly between the Housing Finance Authority and the market. And we respectfully request approval.
Very good. Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motions from Commissioner Manning. Do we have a second? Seconds from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any questions for our staff or discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for public comment. Did anybody come to speak today on item number 1 on our public hearing agenda? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Any further discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. Item number 2, Mr. Wesh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 2 is your second and final public hearing to amend Chapter 2, Article 4, entitled Wetlands. Commissioners, as you will recall, you heard this matter 2 weeks ago at a 5 o'clock public hearing. There have been no substantive changes since that public hearing, and again, following the conduct of another public hearing, we would respectfully request approval.
Very good. Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Manning. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have any questions for our staff before I take public comment? Okay, seeing none, does anybody come to speak in public comment on the wetlands item today? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Any further discussion, commissioners? Any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Item 3, Mr. Wesh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 3 is your second and final public hearing to designate Burnt Store Road as a controlled access road. Commissioners, you recall this matter was heard previously by you in public hearing. At that time, there was some discussion regarding an access point. You directed your staff to work with the spokesperson. That discussion has taken place. It's my understanding that all parties are now satisfied with the outcome. This is your second and final public hearing as required by your Land Development Code, and we would respectfully request approval. Mr. Searchy is here if the board has any substantive questions.
So moved.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Manning. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Let me ask, does anybody have any questions for our staff on this before we take public comment? Very good. For public comment on this one, this is just public comment related to the controlled access portion of Burnt Store Road. So we'll call up, I guess, our first speaker, Mr. Schropp.
Thank you.
Does anybody else also wish to speak in public comment on the controlled access Burnt Store Road item? Okay, very good. Mr. Schropp, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For your record, I'm Russell Schropp, here today representing GA Pinnacle Cape Coral, LLC. And just sort of as a follow-up to Mr. Wesch's comments, you may recall I appeared at the first public hearing on this matter and addressed you regarding the lack of access provided to the Pinnacle property. It has about 4,000 lineal feet on Burnt Store Road and also has about 260 acres of frontage on Burnt Store. We expressed some concerns at the first hearing about the lack of access to this property, particularly given that the City of Cape Coral designates it as a mixed-use and commercial area. Since that time, our consultants met with Mr. Searchy and his staff, and additional access points have been provided to the property that address our immediate concerns, and we certainly thank staff for their quickness and ability to work with us in the interim period between the two hearings. As I noted, we are going through the rezoning process with the City of Cape Coral, and we do anticipate kind of reevaluating the access to this site as part of that rezoning process, and we look forward to working with the city as well as the county DOT staff on that regard. So I just mention it because there may be the need for some amendments or alterations or additions to the access that's provided to this property at some point in the future. It's my understanding they can be considered at future public hearings before this board, and I just wanted to mention that at this point. But with that said, again, I'll simply express my appreciation to staff for working with us so quickly, and we look forward to continuing to work with Lee County DOT staff on this property. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Schropp. And we'd be pleased to hear the comments on lighting with Burnt Store Road in just a minute under public presentation of matters by citizens. But did you all wish to speak at all on the controlled access? Okay. Seeing none then. Anybody else who wanted to speak in public comment on that? Good. We'll close public comment. Any further discussion on the controlled access road related to Burnt Store Road?
Always appreciative of the cooperation between all parties, so thank you very much.
Absolutely. Very good. Any further comments? All right. Seeing none, are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Very good. All right. That takes us through our public hearings. And Mr. DeGillet, we have no walk-ons and no carryovers today?
That's correct.
Okay. And we'll move on to commissioner items. Commissioner Mann, do you have any items today? Commissioner Manning?
No.
Commissioner Pendergrass, any items?
No items today.
Nope. Commissioner Sandelli? No. I have two items, commissioners, to bring up. Item number one, I'm going to need a motion on this. Our natural resources staff has approached me as the West Coast Inland Navigation District liaison. There is a project at the Fort Myers Beach entrance channel that the Army Corps of Engineers is working on right now to dredge that channel. It appears that there's too much sand and too little money. When they began the project, they encountered more sand than they initially expected. And so if the Army Corps of Engineers falls short of funding to finish that project, Lee County would like to use their West Coast Inland Navigation District funds, which we have plenty in reserves, to finish the project while the contractor's still there on site, instead of having to come back and do a new project in the future and remobilize everybody. The ask is for, I'll give you a specific motion language, a motion to authorize WCIND through the Executive Director to work with the Army Corps of Engineers to complete the Fort Myers Beach entrance channel dredging using Lee County WCIND funds that have been previously approved for administration by WCIND on behalf of Lee County, and that's up to $250,000.
So moved.
So the motion is from Commissioner Manning. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any questions on that?
So the max is 250,000?
Correct, yeah.
And we're bailing out the United States Army Corps of Engineers.
Yeah.
That is something.
The thought is
billions and billions.
That's absolutely correct. The thought is if you can.
We just like to help where we can.
Yeah, and continue the project before the contractor leaves. You get efficiencies there.
When they remove the sand, are they replacing it somewhere near the channel, or they're using it for beach renourishment?
That's a great question. I see Mr. Ottolini here. Could you answer that for us?
Yes, Roland Ottolini Natural Resources. They have a spoil site that's near shore, not right on the beach at Fort Myers Beach, but it's just a certain distance offshore because it was not compatible to place directly on the beach, but it is a permitted spoil location. Now, with movement of winds and natural occurrences, it will eventually move its way onto the beach, but doesn't permit.
That's why I thought maybe be placed somewhere else based upon the current away from the channel, but hopefully it won't come back over the next 10 years.
Well, it's an ongoing process. The sand will continuously move north in that area. There's a predominant drift of the sand in that region, so it will always be a maintained channel. It's just, yeah, you put it further down drift to perhaps, restore some of the shore protection in Fort Myers Beach, but it will eventually move north.
Okay.
And Roland, real quick while you're up there, I think I remember from an earlier briefing on this too that is it possible if we did have to use the money to help the Army Corps finish the project that at a point in the future they could reimburse us for that?
That I don't know.
No? Okay. All right. That's what I'm wondering. All right. Very good. Any other questions or comments on this item?
Only that by not shutting it down and restarting it, I'm sure that's a more efficient way to do that, so I prefer to do it that way. Thank you.
Yeah. Very good. All right. And at this time, then, if there's no further comments, does anybody wish to speak in public comment on this motion before we move it? Okay, we'll close public comment. I'll call the question. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you. And then my second item, Commissioners, I wanted to update you on a conversation that Mr. DeJolet and I had with the Sheriff's Office. So I think we've all noticed it recently. There's a real increase in panhandlers at pretty much every intersection up and down 41 in North Fort Myers right now. It is something that concerns the citizens and the traveling public because they're worried about safety with these folks being on the medians and so close to the roads. They're certainly worried about the blight, and it's not a good appearance for our area, especially in North Fort Myers, a place that this board has shown commitment to trying to revitalize. And we're also concerned to see that these folks get help if they're willing to accept it. So we had a meeting with the sheriff to kind of talk about what issues he's seeing, and he shared very similar concerns with me and the county manager. And he also mentioned that they have a great working relationship with our Human Services Department and these HOT teams, the homeless outreach teams that they've formed. So my request coming out of that meeting was, since we're a board that focuses on policies, programs and funding projects, could we get together in a workshop sometime, hopefully in October, with the Sheriff's Office and with our Human Services Department to talk about some solutions, some projects or policies or programs we can undertake, even if they're temporary, to address what is definitely a problem that our residents are seeing?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, very good. All right, and Roger, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think just to add to your comments, when we met with the sheriff and his folks, Mark Mora was with us as well, and we had a conversation about the current negotiations that are underway between Lee County and the Salvation Army, and it involves a short-term and long-term plan for homeless aid. One of the programs that we discussed with the sheriff and Commissioner Hammond was the day sheltering program that the Salvation Army uses today that provides some of the services that people talk about for being able to do laundry, be able to get cleaned up, use restrooms, and get fed. And so I'm going to ask, if Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'm going to ask Mr. Moore to just give us kind of a quick short-term, long-term look at what Salvation Army is doing. And in the workshop, we think we want to talk with you about that the day shelter program that perhaps might be replicated by other nonprofits where there may be an opportunity for us to participate in the future. We don't know yet. There's a lot of due diligence to be done. But with your permission, I'm going to ask Mark to just take us through that quickly.
Very good.
Mark.
Thank you, County Manager. Good morning, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to update you on our work with the Salvation Army in regards to a day shelter. Originally, our plan was to do something within 90 days, and there obviously is a need immediately. Mr. Harner and I had met with the Salvation Army leadership team just recently, and we'll be standing up a program almost immediately to address some of the issues we're seeing here, particularly in the city of Fort Myers, as well as North Fort Myers. The concept of a day shelter, as the county manager suggested, as well as Commissioner Hammond, was well received by the sheriff's office. It's something they're familiar with. It's something that we saw as a successful model across the country, not only in this state, but in other states as well. And one of the driving points here is providing that basic need to the folks that are homeless, as well as those wraparound services that seem to be missing. In our conversations with homeless and homeless advocates, there seems to be some gaps that have not been met, and some of that is basically just coordinating those core services. And when I mention those, they could be as basic as laundry, haircuts, feeding, but more importantly, the mental health aspect of it, the behavioral health component. So to that end, part of that day shelter will incorporate that type of wraparound. If I may just touch on the homeless outreach team as well, because that was one of the actions that was subsequent to our meeting last week is the engagement of the Sheriff's Office, Sergeant Canfield in particular, with our homeless team planning. That group is going to be driven by law enforcement, but also will be coupled with our Human Veteran Services team as well as those behavioral health wraparound services. So we're really excited about the HOT teams. That plan is coming together quite well. I'm making a prediction that that will be stood up within the next few weeks, and we'll see some impact from that action. I think it's really positive to see the leveraging of the collaborative resources. The Sheriff's Office has a reach that we don't have as a Human Veteran Services team. Right now, they're helping us perform a census to identify where the greatest needs are, where their encampments are located, so that we can do some outreach coordination. And I think more importantly, it's the relationships they have with the community already that we could leverage as well. So I'm very happy to say that, subsequent to that meeting, we've already started out on a positive foot, and hopefully within the next few months, we'll see some results from those actions in that meeting.
And so, Mr. Chair, if it pleases the board, if you agree you'd like to do the workshop, we can schedule that for October 20th, which is a board meeting day.
Very good. And it sounds like you have consensus to schedule that workshop, and I appreciate your efforts to do that. Because, Commissioner Sandelli, you've been such an advocate for homeless issues and working closely with our Human Services Department, rather, on this, would you offer up that motion to direct staff to schedule that workshop for us on our behalf?
More than happy to. Roger, I'd like to formally push this along to October 20th. I also want to thank Mark and everybody else that's been involved in this. It's an important part of our constituency that needs help right now.
Second.
Thank you for your work on that, Commissioner Sandelli. And the second is from Commissioner Manning. Do we have anybody who's here to speak in public comment today about the homeless issues? Okay, I'll close public comment then. Oh, Mr. Ballard, come on forward.
Good morning, Commissioners. Danny Ballard, North Fort Myers Civic Association. We, as you know, we've talked about the homeless in North Fort Myers. I spent a day and I rode with the district commander over there, and we talked about different things, the district commander from the Sheriff's Office, and we talked about things. I've addressed issues with Mr. Mora, and something that the Civic Association has taken on. We are going to help in every way we can. One of the ways I know we can, and myself and Mr. Moore talked about the Hancock Square undeveloped area. The owner of that property that lives in Fort Lauderdale He's being very evasive. His emails are all coming back. His phone's been disconnected. Well, we're going to reach out. We're going to find him. The Civic Association, we're going to find him. And we're going to see, and talking to Mark, that might be a prime place to be able to build, refurbish, do something for the homeless to address all of the needs as far as health care, as far as maybe a place to do laundry, to feed them, even if it comes down to that, provide a place that beds could be where they could have a dormitory type place. Instead of them sleeping on the streets, maybe we can find, maybe together as a county coalition, we can make this happen. The Salvation Army does a tremendous job here, but their hands are kind of tied when it is getting into North Fort Myers and other areas of the county, and they really don't have the ability to create salvation satellites, I guess is a good way to put it. So it's going to take other things added to what they currently can do to resolve this issue, and it is an issue. The good thing this morning, I guess, in coming down here, there wasn't a first person in any intersection in North Fort Myers. So I don't know, maybe we're already doing it, or maybe it's just crappy weather's keeping them out of the intersections.
There you go. Thanks for your comments, Mr. Ballard. And Mr. Hartman, I see you had your hand up.
I swear this wasn't planned. But I did just want to say I'm glad that we are addressing this issue. I have been homeless before, and most of you know I'm also on the autism spectrum, and that's kind of the reason I wanted to bring this up. I know that we are working with Salvation Army. I can tell you, unfortunately, from personal experience, that they are not good at providing accommodations to those individuals with neurological conditions. I am hoping that this county makes sure that, since we're working with them and they're basically one of the major suppliers of these type of homeless shelters and providing these services, that they provide these reasonable accommodations for individuals with neurological differences, cognitive differences, so that way everyone who needs the services will be able to use them. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for your comments. And we have one more. Yeah, come forward.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Gary Seaman. We're going to have a topic later on that will address some of these issues too. With the homeless, until they hit bottom, they're not going to seek help. And I see all the people on the corners, unfortunately, from my experience, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, that handing money to people out there does not help the problem, it only prolongs the problem. I feel for the people out there. I was close to being homeless at one time, which, again, I'll refer to later on. So it's a tough situation, and I hope you gentlemen could come up with something that works. And I just wanted to speak to that. I'll speak to the rest later. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Very good. Any further comments? All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Commissioner Pendergrass, you're recognized.
Chairman, thank you for having this conversation with the sheriff. During your discussion before we have this workshop, obviously it's not going to be fixed overnight, for public safety reasons, for traffic concerns, the sheriff, are they going to be taking action? Because there are current state and county ordinances now where they can effectively remove people from the intersections if they're in the roadway now. Are they doing that now with the sheriff's permit?
Yeah, Mr. DeGilet, you want to talk about that? The sheriff's office is doing everything they can within the constitutional rights of the folks who are out there.
So if they're in the roadway, they're not using the crosswalks, they're just impeding the flow of traffic, or if they're on, so state statute, they can be issued citations for if they're impeding the flow of traffic, if they're not permitted to be there. So, and also they have county ordinances for panhandling too. So are they enforcing those state laws now?
Yes, Commissioner, in the conversation with the sheriff, I believe he is taking all of the actions that are available to him under law. One thing that he is attempting to avoid is putting people in jail, because that's of no real value to anyone, and it's pretty costly. But up to that point, yes, they're exercising all of their powers.
Well, a lot of times they can inform people of the law and inform them and get consensus to them to obviously leave the area for their own safety and for the vehicle traffic also. So.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Commissioner Mann?
Mr. Chairman, I just got to think out loud with you on this as we move forward, and I've certainly don't have any problem with the motion, and in fact, I'm trying to figure out how all five of us, or if there's more than one that would like to participate in this, how we could do that.
Yeah, that's the motion. We'd all have.
We all could if we wanted to.
It'll be a normal workshop with us, and probably.
So sunshine would not be an issue.
Correct. Yeah.
Because this is a very delicate issue that you're talking about. And I'll give you an example. I have had people complain to me that they are resentful of the firefighters out there with their boots at the intersections collecting contributions. And I don't know how you're going to draw the line as to allow such as that, which is almost, and it seems like an American right for the firefighters, and distinguish between their rights and any other citizen's rights to stand there with a little piece of cardboard that says hungry and homeless. It's a very delicate issue. And I don't know what the law is on it, but I doubt it gives police officers the authority to pick them up, put them in their car and drive them a couple of blocks and let them out again and say you can't do that anymore. And I guess that's what we're talking about. But it's a touchy issue. It's one we've had in my adult Sunday school classes, the old WWJD. What would Jesus do if he drove down and here's a guy standing with a cardboard sign? And I struggle with that every time I see one of these guys. And sometimes I reach my pocket, I grab out whatever the first bill is and give them to. I saw at the Home Depot in North Fort Myers just a week ago a lady with a baby in a stroller with a little cardboard sign. So there is no simple answer. I guess this is just a caveat on my part as having lived longer than most of you guys, or all of you guys, and experience this and say, I want to live in a community where that's not necessary. But boy, I sure don't have the answer. But I think it's good for us to address it with the other people that are affected or could help. So I'm supportive of it. I thank you for bringing it forward, and I look forward to seeing what we can produce here.
Good deal. All right. Well, if there's no further discussion, then I'll go ahead and call the question. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously, and we look forward to that workshop. Mr. DeGillet, thank you for your work on that. And Mr. Mora, thank you very much for what you guys did to be able to give us the information today, even at this meeting. We look forward to seeing what you guys come up with.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. All right, that concludes Commissioner items. Commissioner Mann, do you have any appointments to make?
I do have one to the EROC committee, Bill Duke. It's a reappointment.
Okay, and so we have a motion from Commissioner Mann, and the second is from Commissioner Manning. Do we have any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries. Commissioner Manning?
I have one new appointment and 3 reappointments. The new appointment is for Charles Rayborn to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. The reappointments are for Jay Johnson to the Land Development Code Committee, reappointment of Paul McMichael, apologize for that, Land Development Code Committee, and a reappointment of Sam Hagan to the Executive Regulatory Oversight Committee.
Second.
So the motion's from Commissioner Manning, the second's from Commissioner Pendergrass. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Pendergrass?
None.
Okay, Commissioner Sandelli?
I have one reappointment, Patrick Vanassi, to the Land Development Code Advisory Committee.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Sandelli and a second from Commissioner Manning. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. I will need a motion for these. I have 2 new appointments. The first one is coming to us by way of the legislature, which now requires that we have an elected official from each county on the Affordable Housing Committee. So I'd like to appoint Commissioner Ray Sandelli because of his interest in affordable housing. So we have I'll need a motion. Motion from Commissioner Manning. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do you have any discussion? Any objection? No objection. Congratulations, Commissioner. You're appointed unanimously to that committee. And then the other ones I'll go through quickly. I need a motion for Nadish Pierre to the Partnering for Results Review Panel, Tom Leonard to the Land Development Code Committee, and Amy Tebow to the Land Development Code Committee?
So moved.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion from Commissioner Manning and a second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. All right, that concludes committee appointments. Mr. County Manager, any items today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two very quick ones. First of all, just a reminder that this evening at 5:05 is the final public hearing for approval of Lee County's fiscal year 2021 budget. And then secondly, we'd like Mr. Salyer to give you a quick Lee Cares update.
Thank you, Mr. Desjardins. Commissioners, we want to remind anyone who is still interested in applying for our Lee Cares Business Rehire Program or our Individual and Families Assistance Program who hasn't yet done so to get those applications in by the end of the week. That application window, you will recall, does close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Additionally, we will open the Lee Cares Human Services Grant Program that you authorized on September 1st this coming Monday. And then finally, I just want to let you all know that another round of PPE distribution for businesses got underway today. We're in Lehigh Acres this week at Veterans Park. Next week, we'll be at North Fort Myers Rec Center. And then the last week in September, we will be at the Estero Rec Center.
Very good. Thanks, Mr. Salyer. Any questions, Commissioners, on the County Manager items? Commissioner Pendergrass?
On this other subject real quick, I know this weekend we had a lot of rain throughout the county, and I know the city of Sanibel, I see the mayor of Sanibel here, Kevin's here to this day. Our staff's been working with the other cities. Any issues throughout the weekend from the rain, with the drainages? I know Randy Searchy's been involved. I know he was contacted me over the weekend. We had some issues. South Lake County.
Where's Randy?
With Whiskey Creek. He's over here.
Yeah, Randy.
So the question is just kind of what we've seen.
Yeah, and as far as all the drains, everything's working fine. We didn't find anything that was blocked or wasn't working properly. In South Lake County, like up with Cypress Lake in that area.
Yeah, good morning again. We did that. There was some wind blown when the storm first came. The wind knocked some pine needles and some branches in some of the catch basins. We cleaned those up out of some prior rain. This weekend we had little or no of that kind of blockages, although there's just an intense amount of rainfall hit some of the barrier islands like Captiva and Sanibel. Not much you can do about that until it drains out.
Well, I know your crew's out there over the weekend working, so thank you to all your crews and try to keep the water moving. So hopefully we won't have to deal with it anymore this year. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. County Manager.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll turn to the County Attorney for your items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two. The first is the 26th extension of the COVID-19 state of local emergency.
Second.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Manning, and the second is from Commissioner Mann. Do we have any discussion on that? Anybody here to speak in public comment on extending the state of local emergency related to COVID? Okay, we'll close public comment. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. Mr. Wesch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second item, no action is required. It's for information only. I'm pleased to report to you that late yesterday afternoon, we received word that the Department of Economic Opportunity entered a final order in the litigation that we're involved in with Cicada Seed Corporation and Cicada America Holdings versus Lee County and Troyer Brothers. The Department of Economic Opportunity affirmed the recommended order issued by the hearing officer in the county's favor. Either party now has 30 days to file an appeal in the District Court of Appeal. Inasmuch as we carried the day in its entirety, we are not recommending any appeal.
Very good. All right, any questions for our county attorney?
I have one.
Yeah, Commissioner Mann.
And I should have warned you about this, but you can get with me later if you don't have a quick answer. The horticultural business on Bay Shore that keeps catching fire again and again and again. We're in litigation with them. I myself, when I saw it on TV that the smoke was again, I was out there trying to figure out what's going on. There was just a little bit of smokes, and the crisis went away. And after 48 hours of rain, maybe it's not a problem. But what is our legal status, and what am I able to do or not do as a commissioner when people are calling me up about saying, "Why don't y'all do something?"
Commissioner, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Commissioner, we'd be happy if you would forward those calls to our office so that we can log them and report them to the court. Commissioners, as you recall, the county authorized litigation against MW Horticulture. We have a hearing now across the street on November 3rd, at which time we are seeking injunctive relief to be entered into by the court against MW Horticulture. So with regard to citizen complaints, we believe they'll be relevant as evidence in the court proceeding since it's a nuisance-based pleading. So if you would, please make our office aware of that.
It is my understanding, if I may continue just a brief second, that the company there is still receiving debris at their location and it's stacking it higher and higher. Are we not able to stop that, or is that what's your thoughts there?
Again, Commissioners, this has been a multi-pronged attack. They are continuing to be in violation of county ordinance and are accruing a $200 a day fine for their activities.
Which hadn't scared anybody off. They're still just continuing the same thing.
That's correct, which is also why we file or sought permission to file an injunctive action across the street in the circuit court. So once that order is entered, if they continue to violate that order, they are then liable to be held in contempt by the circuit court, and they have greater powers than our code enforcement people do.
So not a whole lot can happen between now and November 3rd.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right. Any further questions for our county attorney? And you have no further items?
No, sir. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for the update. At this time, we'll turn to public presentation of matters by citizens. This is the opportunity to speak in public comment on things that were not on today's agenda. I'll call Thomas Howard first, followed by Lawrence Bauer. And when you come up to the podium, you don't have to touch anything. It's all set, and the mic's all adjusted. And there's a little traffic light. It's green, yellow, and red. When the red light comes on, I'm going to go ahead and call the next speaker.
Greetings, Commissioners. My name is Tom Howard. I live off Burnstar Road and Diplomat in Cape Coral. And I'm here on behalf of the 565 residents plus who live along Burnstar Road and the other concerned citizens in Lee County who signed our petition and complained against the lights on Burnstar Road. We've heard people say that they don't understand why the residents don't like those lights. The reasons are simple. First, the LCDOT use commercial parking lot lights, which are unshielded. They radiate light in a 360-degree dispersion pattern, just flooding light everywhere. It's flooding light into our homes and our properties, and it's not directing the light on the road where it belongs. So that's called light trespass. And it's also called light pollution because there's just light everywhere. It's not directed and focused. Second problem is they use too high a color temperature. The American Medical Association, the American Institutes of Health, the International Dark Sky, all warn that any fixtures above 2,700K to maybe 3,000 can cause excess glare, retina damage, et cetera, and health problems in wildlife and in humans. It's documented. You all got a 200-page report. I don't know if you read it, but all the scientific, well, it's just a portion of the scientific studies that have been done on this. So what we would request, and as far as why the people don't like it, I've been up to 300 residents' homes handing out brochures and talking to people, and I can tell you 99% of those people, 99.99% of those people are not happy with those lights. So what you also compare it against veterans. Well, in veterans, they only have lights at the intersections. They're not every 180 feet. We don't need, and they're also a much more responsible color temperature. We don't need that much light every 180 feet. So what I would propose is, Randy Searcy already agreed to this, is that we do light shields, light trespass shields to focus the light more on the road. They can be bought for $100 each. He already agreed to it, but he said we have to take it. If they don't work, then that's our tough luck. So I would propose that we hire the forensic engineering firm for $4,500 that did the study that I gave you all a copy that said the lights should be replaced. And $4,500, they'll take measurements and show you that it's above the American Standards Institute's levels. And so that's that. And then finally, if that doesn't work, we request that the lights be replaced like they were done in Davis County, and that moving forward, Lee County updates their lighting standards more environmentally friendly, like was done in Sanibel and in Collier County and across pretty much the whole country.
Thanks for your time, Mr. Howard. Appreciate it. All right, our next speaker is Lawrence Bauer, followed by Gary Seaman.
Thank you. I'm Larry Bauer, and thank you for hearing me today. The reason I'm here is because I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and there's a meeting that's been held out in Alva for over 30 years. It's at the community center there in Alva. It actually preceded the community center. It used to be in the old fire annex that they had there, the fire station annex. Anyway, with the COVID, that community center was shut down, and so the meeting had to cease being there. So I've been in touch with a number of people at the Parks Department that handle that. James, Anicia, Christiane, and asking when can we open up again, when can we have our meetings there. They happen there on Wednesday nights. And so they had various things. One, they would have a water problem there, that they had to get water from the school, and they got that resolved. But then the final answer I got was that you guys, the Board of Commissioners, have not authorized the community centers to be opened up for general purposes. And so what I would like to suggest and appeal is that this is not a general purpose. An AA meeting is really kind of an essential service. And it kind of dovetails with what you were talking about with homeless people. The people that come to these meetings, they're not homeless. They're the people that have decided that they want to do something about their problem, and they're living sober. But going to meetings is an essential part of their recovery. So if you guys could see to it that we could have our meetings on Wednesday nights there, start up again, that'd be very much appreciated, and I think it would be a good service for the community. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks for your comments. And Gary Seaman?
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Gary S. We kind of use anonymous. I'm not that anonymous right now, but to back up with Larry, between the two of us, we have 83 years of sobriety. As I referred to earlier, I was almost homeless at one time. And I also contribute to people on the side of the road that, you know, your hearts go out to, but I know a majority of them either have drug or alcohol problems, and a lot have mental problems too. So the homeless situation, there is no right answer. I don't know how to get there. But in my case, you know, I was in Fort Lauderdale. I was a stone's throw away from being homeless. Got into some trouble. My family had been in Alaska. I moved to Alaska in '84 to sober up. And the way I sobered up was through Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a wonderful program. The Salvation Army, I've seen them do a lot of good work. You know, with us, it's not having this meeting open threatens people. You know, there's reports of alcoholism and drug addiction going up because of the COVID. I would be extremely afraid of, and our meeting there is on a meeting schedule, and someone showing up there and we have no meeting there anymore. That could, you never know what could happen, whether that person would come back or not. Unfortunately, most of the people with alcoholism die from it. I'm an exception, and Larry's an exception to the rule. So I would implore you, and I believe that also it is an essential service, and I don't know if there's other community centers that have AA in it, but I would implore you to open those up. People coming out of treatment centers, the first thing they tell them to is go to an AA meeting. Most good treatment centers suggest AA, and a lot of them use the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. It saved my life. It literally saved my life. I thought I was going to be dead by the age of 30. For God willing, I sobered up at the age of 30. I'm always amazed how that happened. But I hit my bottom. And back to the homeless thing, as long as I was getting help, is when my family started cutting me off that I realized I needed to do something about it, and AA was my avenue to doing it. I think I covered pretty much everything. I agree with Larry. I think this is essential services, and I hope we can find our way through to opening AA meetings up through the community centers that you have.
Very good.
Thank you.
For your comments this morning. And Mr. DeGillet, I see you've got something.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We've been using the governor's executive orders to determine when we're going to reopen some of our facilities that remain closed, whether there's some of the neighborhood libraries or some of our community centers. But I'd like to get together with our staff to have a conversation about this issue specifically on behalf of the gentleman that just spoke, to see how soon we can get that Alva Community Center open back up for those meetings.
I support that. Commissioner Pendergrass?
Roger, thank you for doing that, because I don't know how much of you will actually attend the meeting, but I believe the small attendants could social distance and still be able to together. So if we could work with them, because it's something this is essential. It's something
we're happy to do that.
This is one of the side effects of what's happened over the last 6 months, and I'm sure after November it's going to change a lot. But it's going to be, until now, though, it's really critical that they can meet and get people help. So,
yes, sir. Well, we'll get after it straight away.
Commissioner Mann?
Just let me say amen, too, and I appreciate your initial comments, Roger, very much. In my life, I have experienced, I've been members of committees that worked with alcoholism, and I'm very familiar with the issue. I'm surprised that I have not heard about the Alva facility being closed to them. Usually something the district commissioner hears about. So I would say thank you, Roger. I am totally supportive of trying to find out. Certainly there are, the guidelines, social guidelines that we know, and the mask, and we got to find a way to open that door again.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's just the right thing to do.
Very good. All right, any further comments? No? All right, very good. And before I close public comment, did anybody else wish to speak? Mr. Hartman, go ahead. Anybody else wish to speak in public comment today? Raise your hand. No? All right, well, after Mr. Hartman, then we'll close public comment. Good morning.
I couldn't find the little sheets out there, sorry.
We'll put some new ones
So today I wanted to talk to you about Route 160. I do know that you guys recently got some federal funding for the 50, the 60, and the 160. I've been speaking, thankfully Mayor Ruane has been helping me out a little bit, as well as speaking to the MPO about expanding that. At the very least, I would like to see the Route 160 go the entire week, or at least during the weekdays and Saturdays, because right now it's only running on Thursday and it's by appointment. And I'm hoping that all of us have been to Pine Island. I've had the opportunity to live in Pine Island. It is a beautiful area, and the fact that you only have a bus that goes there at a certain period of time is ridiculous. But what I'd really like to see is North Cape Coral is also relatively underserved by Letran. And I think there's a possibility, and I've been speaking to someone at the MPO about this. They told me they had to do some sort of survey of need. I don't completely understand as to where that's going yet. But what I've been thinking is that you can have a bus that goes up Burnt Store Road through Diplomat. You got the Northwest Regional Library there. You got two public schools there. I know that we're about to build a post office there, which would make us eligible for more federal funding for that Route 160. And it will allow that area to be better served, and us regular people to go into Pine Island and travel to North Cape and the Northwest Regional Library. So I'm hoping that I can continue to speak to individuals with the Metropolitan Planning Organization about that, and hoping that you guys can be committed to expanding that upwards in the future, maybe at the very least allotting some of that federal tax dollars to get a Route 160 going, not by appointment only and only on Thursdays, but maybe Monday through Saturday, so that way regular citizens can go over there, go to Matlacha, spend some time in St. James City or Bokeelia. So that's what I wanted to bring to you guys today. Thank you so much.
Good comments. All right, thank you very much. All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and we have no other business before us today. So with that, we are adjourned. We'll be back for the budget hearing this evening.